Okay, we are here. We are live, but you know the drill, y'all. We got to let it breathe just for a few brief moments. Bring on Facebook, bring on Instagram. There are reasons why we have to do this after we go live, none of which I will tell you and bore you, but it is a necessity, and we're almost there, and we're good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him. And he's Zack Kelberman, just a few days away from Christmas. He can hardly contain himself. This is a Christmas guy. What's up, Zack? How are you, bro?
I'm doing pretty well. The holiday season's in full swing, Chad. And, happy holidays to you and yours, Scott, as well. And I got some things to get off my chest about the Broncos game, as I'm sure you do. This is the aftermath episode, a little
Right.
delayed, but, it is what it is regardless.
I know it's one of those things where we work out our hormones night of for the gut reaction, and on Thursday night games, that's the thing I hate is for us it's nice to have that next day to kind of collect your thoughts a little bit more. You slept on it. So we'll get into that. And our main topics for tonight anyway are kind of residual storylines coming out of Thursday night football. We're going to talk about kind of the new playoff picture, where the Broncos stand as a result of how some of these Week 16 games have shaken out. But first things first, Zack, what I want to get to is Sean Payton came out this morning, held himself a little conference call presser, and one of the topics, in fact, it was the last question he was asked, when Riley Moss returns, what does he bring, blah, blah, blah. And here's what he said, quote, "We were and have been super excited to get him back. Obviously, the guy that plays opposite of Patrick Surtain is going to get a lot of business. All throughout training camp, Moss really rose to the occasion, battled, competed, and throughout really a good portion of the season. He's been a big reason why we were playing so well defensively. The sooner the better when we can get him back in the lineup. Hopefully, it can happen this weekend," close quote. Now, Zack, before I serve this back to you, with that having been said, I did a little research, and would you believe it that before, not counting week 12, okay, since he did play a decent portion of that game, then he got hurt. So throwing out week 12, going into that game, the Broncos had the 7th ranked passing defense, relinquishing 190.7 yards per game. In the 3 games he has missed, all right, the Broncos have relinquished 299.6. That's an increase, Zack, of 108.9 yards per game. That is what Riley Moss brings to the table for you.
Yeah, who would have thought that Riley Moss is like the Lord and Savior to Vance Joseph's defense? They need him, Chad, this week. I was going to say you don't have to rush him if you would have beaten the Chargers and locked up a playoff spot, but now you're winning, you're in, and your back's against the wall. You're playing a Bengals team that has 2 elite wide receivers, and as you saw against the Chargers, you have to be able to play man coverage. Riley Moss can do that excellently along with PS2. They can't rely on Damari Mathis and Chris Abrams-Drain against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, so he has to be out there on Saturday.
As encouraging as Chris Abrams-Drain has been, yeah, if you can get Riley Moss back, Zack, even at 95%, dude, like you said, backs against the wall, the proverbial chips are down. You can't rest on any laurels. Papa Bear, bro, bringing the spirit of the season. I love it. Thank you for the early super chat, my friend. He says, "Merry Christmas, Broncos country. Chad, Zack, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag God bless the USA. Hashtag 10 and 7 plus. Let's go, Bo. MHH for life. Buckham times 3. Denver Broncos for life. Knicks for 6. SEAL Team Knicks." Zack, are you still a Bo lever?
I am. Yeah, you can make a list of the things that, the culprits for the Broncos losing that game. I would put Bo down toward the bottom of that. He didn't play perfectly, Chad. He missed a couple throws, but the coaching did him no favors. The defense did him no favors. He still had, 260 yards and 2 touchdowns against a really, really good defense, the number 1 in the NFL in points allowed on the road in prime time. That loss was not on Bo Nix. But Merry Christmas to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you, bro. And by the way, Jaden Daniels went off today. We're going to talk about that. Not a perfect game, but a prolific game. We're going to talk about how that combined with Knicks not making it 5 in a row, right? They were on a 4-game winning streak. Then they lost. Not great, but he didn't throw a pick. We'll talk about how this shakes up, possibly reshapes also the offensive rookie of the year race. First, though, Taylor Christensen jumping in with a super. What is good, big dog? He says, this week was a loss across the board. Not only we lost, but we got no help. I have a feeling we're going to screw it up, but have to win next week, MHH for life. Bite your tongue, Taylor. You don't even speak that in any way. You don't risk speaking that in any way, shape, or form into existence. I'm just kidding about the bite your tongue, but you know what I'm saying? Let's stay positive. We have no reason not to. Seriously. The only reason we have, Taylor, not to be, or the only reason we have to be dubious and to start predicting disappointment is, Zach, strictly the trauma of the disappointments of the preceding 8 years. Throw it out the window. Don't let it get to you. Rest assured, the Broncos know. They defied all these expectations. Bo Nix turned out to be an offensive rookie of the year caliber player. They have a chance. They are not going to squander it. Hook or crook, here's your bold prediction. Broncos clinch, whether it's this week or next, they're going to clinch. Bronk, good evening. Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. Go Bo Broncos. Thank you, buddy. Merry Christmas to you. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Ronk. I definitely understand the apprehension because they need a win and in, but you're facing the Bengals, whose offense is red hot, Chad. Then you come home and play the Chiefs. Even if they rest Mahomes, they lost to a Mahomes backup in the past, and I understand it might be different with so much on the line, but I kind of like it this way, Taylor, and I'll give you an against the grain opinion. I didn't want the Broncos to back in. I didn't want them to get in because they got help. I want them to do it themselves. Everyone's counting them out again. Everyone's down on them. Good. They're better when they're underdogs. No one's going to predict them to win Saturday, and guess what? I think they'll come out and surprise us all on Saturday and punch their ticket and make up for the Chargers game.
That's true. Now, listen, the Broncos, they were on a 4-game winning streak. That came crashing around their ears, came crashing down around their ears. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Bengals are winners of 3 in a row. They have beaten but here's the murderer's row, Zach, that they've vanquished in 3 consecutive weeks. Dallas Cowboys by a touchdown, Tennessee Titans by 10 points, and then today shellacked the Cleveland Browns for the most part, 24-6. So, look, this team can be had. We'll get a lot more into this as the coming week comes forward, because let's see, we've got tomorrow night, Zach and I. Then we'll be back our show Thursday night after Christmas. So we're going to have plenty of time to break down the Bengals, but it really comes down to this. You have to keep Joe Burrow off the field. That means running the ball, converting on third down, and getting points out of it. And when Joe Burrow's on the field, you're going to need your boys. You're going to need your top 3 corner trio. You got to have Surtain, Moss, and McMillan if you want to stand a chance of shutting them down. Because if, Zach, you get 2 of those 3, let's say it is CAD out there. Maybe Moss can't go, just for the sake of argument. Joe Burrow is as savvy as it gets. That's where the ball's going to be going. Now, maybe like he did with Justin Herbert, Zach, he'll make him pay a time or 2. But listen to me. Vance Joseph isn't just putting Abrams Drain at the boundary. They're still playing Damari Mathis in base. Then they roll in Abrams Drain in sub package, obvious passing, third down, etc. So you're really rolling the dice. You got to have Riley Moss back, but that's the general model. Keep Burrow on the sideline, score, drive, and when he's on the field, baby, stop that pass.
And when he's on the field, get pressure on him, unlike what they did against Herbert. He had all day to throw, Chad. And again, I'll say Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are not Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson. It's going to be a challenge. They're going to get theirs, but it's a bigger test. And again, we'll talk about it on Thursday, but it's a bigger test for the Broncos offense. They can't come out slow. They can't score just 13, 17, 20 points. This Bengals defense is trash. They're going to have to lean on Bo to put points on the board, Chad.
Justin Lloyd, amen to that. With a super chat, thank you, buddy, and a question. And we are, after all, your football priests. We're here to offer you, Justin, the absolution and the answers to your burning Broncos questions. And he wants to know, Zach, have we heard anything on Drew Sanders, the second-year linebacker, getting more snaps or perhaps starting? The answer to that question is no. First of all, nothing Sean Payton said in his postgame Thursday intimated or even addressed Drew Sanders that I can recall. And then, pardon me, today it did not come up. But I think, Zach, what you're going to see is continually more and more usage. He's still getting his game legs beneath him, strategic here and there. For now, I think, Zach, because look, they promoted Zach Cunningham to the 53 after going through a few elevations with Quan Alexander. You haven't seen Zach Cunningham really on the field since they promoted him. And yet Sanders got a few bites at the apple last week. They really like what they have right now in Sternad and Barton, despite the warts.
Yeah, they're the same player. Like was having Alex Singleton and Josie Jewell as the starting linebackers. They're completely one-dimensional. Listen, I'm not a football coach. Vance Joseph is. I saw Sternad struggling in coverage and missing tackles from the first quarter. It took VJ until the fourth quarter to put Drew Sanders in. Sanders gets one snap. He makes an impact play. So if that doesn't convince VJ to give Sanders more playing time, then he's stuck in his ways, kind of like Sean is on offense.
It'll be interesting, Zach, to see if the Broncos go into week 17 as underdogs. And speaking of underdog, guys, we got to talk to you about Underdog Fantasy, which is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. Join myself, Zach, Scott, and over 5 million fans who are already playing on Underdog. With their pick'em game, you could win money by making entries on your favorite players, compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower. It's real simple. On 2 or more players' stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. Turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog.
And with their champs game, you can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, will Bo Nix have higher or lower than 237.5 passing yards on Saturday? Will Nix have higher or lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns? Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
I hope it's not the over in this game. They're going to need him to slightly be under and let that running game go after it. But listen, guys, download the Underdog app today. Use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the Underdog app today. Use our code MHuddle. Get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower with Underdog.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concern with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
All right, back to the chat. We got Casey Nickel checking in. What's good, big dog? Longtime Super Chat superstar. Says, Bengals, short week. We had extra time. If we're going to make a run, this is the game that shows we can. Hashtag bright future. Exactly. Good point. Hey, how legit are you, Broncos? The win total up to this point being nearly, or at least in position to double Vegas's over-under prediction, whatever. That's gratifying, but it gets you nowhere if you fail to win one of these games. Win one of these games, prove that you can emerge victorious, Zach, when the chips are down, your season's on the line. And look, the Bengals, they're keeping their probabilities alive. So you're still, Zach, in their house. You're going to get their best shot. You better come correct. And to quote John Franklin Myers, then I'm serving this back to you. Keith Cummings had a nice article on this. The Broncos were kind of complacent, according to JFM, Zach, last week, going into LA because they were riding that 4-game winning streak. They took their eye off the ball a little bit, according to him, but that loss was a wake-up call. We'll see how true that is.
I was going to say, extra time, Casey. The Broncos had extra time coming off the bye against the Colts, and look how they started that game. So it's almost like the Broncos, we don't want them to have extra time. We want them to just be in the moment and ride the momentum, good or bad, and that's what they'll look like they'll be doing. The rap on them, though, Chad and Casey, is that they can't beat a winning team, and they're not going to get that chance because the Bengals are 7-8. And then even if they play Casey, well, if they're going to play Casey, but even if they beat them, if they rest their starters, there's always going to be an excuse as to, they still beat a winning team, but they weren't playing Mahomes. Ultimately, though, it doesn't matter. If you go out there on Saturday, another primetime game, and stamp your own ticket, then more people will come around. But at this point, do we want them to? I think the Broncos, like I said, are better as underdogs, Chad.
It's really true. This is not a team that's quite yet in a position from relearning how to win and funneling that confidence into win after win, like the way we used to do with Peyton Manning, for example, or the way you see or saw, Tom Brady and the Patriots, the way you saw even now today, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They are just better when they're under the radar. When no one's really looking, they come in, they clock them. But, baby, that defense so badly needs Riley Moss back, because it's not only the impact of how the passing production is basically diminished by a third, But let's not forget, Zach, we talk about like Sternad with all the missed tackles and so many blown things in the box. Listen, dude, this was when he got hurt, and this is nearly unheard of for a corner to be in the team lead for tackles. He ranked second on the team in tackles when he got hurt in week 12, and he's still ranked third. He hasn't played in a month. He's still ranked third. So you get that edge presence, that physicality the Broncos need it. James Todd, what's good, dude? He says, I understand people being nervous, but we've been playing a ton of zone since Moss went down. When Moss gets back, we go back to our man blitz scheme. It's going to be tough, but it's supposed to be. And that's the final factor here is it's not just Zach, the rotation of the personnel that's coming in and out in relief of Moss. It's the philosophical shift that for whatever reason, Vance Joseph has felt compelled to make, going from what has worked, man blitz scheme, and what is his expertise, to zone, which is less his expertise, and puts more pressure on the players who are less experienced doing it as a unit.
Exactly, spot on. And how many times last season did we get on VJ for using PS2 in zone off coverage, Chad, giving a cushion 10 yards before the first down, not playing bump and run and press? This is a big spot for VJ. He has to prove or disprove whether Riley Moss is the key to the defense. What happens if they come out and just look as bad as they did against the Chargers? They get no pressure. It would start that facade and the narrative starts to crumble. That unless they create turnovers or things go their way, then this defense isn't very effectual. I hope that's not the case. I hope Riley Moss coming back puts the Broncos where they were to start the season.
And that's to say nothing of the scoring. I mean, the Broncos gave up 32 to the Browns without Moss. In week 15, it wasn't as much of a scoring thing, but you give up 13. Okay, so what's that? 44. And then you gave up 34. So 44, I'm just going to math this. I'm going to do the division. 44 plus 34 equals divided by 3. So you're, without him on the field, Zach, giving up 26 points a game. That's another statistical reflection of the diminished state this Broncos defense is in without Riley Moss. And it's crazy because I never would have thought, Zach, I'm not trying to glaze him like he's the new whatever. He's not the new Champ Bailey. We've already got that guy. That's Patrick Surtain. But we're seeing that he is very much a glue guy. I mean, we knew he was good, Zach. We knew he was important. But this level of important, it's unbelievable. And honestly, I think the biggest explanation is more of the philosophical shift. It's not that Abrams, Drain, or Mathis aren't up to the challenge, etc. It's more that the defensive coordinator felt compelled to suddenly go, without Moss, we're going to go zone. And that just put the onus too much on the guys that are still getting experience playing together, A. B, that communication isn't there. That's the one key with zone. If you're going to run zone, you got to rep that so that the back-end communication, Zach, is on point. Without it, you're going to get sliced and diced just like you saw Herbert do, just like you saw Winston, and to a lesser degree, Anthony Richardson.
My thing is, though, I mean, I can understand a small drop-off without Riley Moss, but like you pointed out in Illustrated, Chad, it was a massive night and day difference. So to me, what does that say? If I want to straw man that, you need a number one cornerback, the best in the NFL. You need one of the best number twos, and you need one of the best slot cornerbacks in order for your defense to be successful. Oh, and by the way, Defensive Player of the Year candidate Nick Benito. That, to me, is where I go back to VJ thinking, is there somebody else that can maximize the talent that they have? Are they still playing as well? It's a question I asked before the season, Chad. A question I'm still asking now.
It's a great point, and I'm going to stay open and undecided on the answer for me until we see what happens these last two games on VJ. I want him to prove us wrong with our misgivings. And honestly, I'd like to hear from him on Thursday when the coordinators traditionally stand at the podium at Dove Valley. And I want to hear, hey, coach, why have you felt compelled to change philosophically to so much zone? It's not that they haven't run any man. It's that the predominant packages they're running have been zone, and it has not played to his team's strengths. MBLEX test prep in the house. Thank you, pal. We all need to drink some eggnog and relax. The Broncos will be fine. Santa will be bringing us a playoff berth. Trust. I love it, dude. I'm here for that, and I actually agree with you. I'm not putting on orange blinders. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I genuinely believe that loss, Zach, will end up being viewed in hindsight in LA as fortuitous because it was, as JFM said, the wake-up call Denver needed to stop sniffing their own farts and get back to doing what they do.
Yeah, it's a big pressure point and a pivot point in the Broncos season. They've been doing this for the last couple of weeks, and what I mean by that is feeling themselves, reading their own press clippings, Chad, smelling whatever bodily functions exit their orifices. But you can't sustain a winning product like that in the NFL, especially in a team like the Broncos, who up until this season did not know even how to win. They're first learning how to win and become a playoff team. So we have to trust the process. I agree with you, Zachary, but hopefully Santa, your mouth to God's ears. I'll put it that way.
Great point, though, dude. Brandon Williams in the house with some stars on Facebook. Thank you, buddy. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. Really appreciate the support, big dog. Give our best to your family as well. Zach, okay, I want to shift gears just a little bit while we have a moment to breathe here. Let's talk about the week 16. So the games that mattered to the Broncos, let me make sure. Okay, I'm on week 16. That mattered or had any effect were slightly Dolphins Niners. Dolphins won that one. You wanted Dolphins to lose. Bengals Browns. You wanted Bengals to lose. They won. You had where's the Houston KC game? You know, in a perfect world, you would want Houston to win. They lost. Literally none of the game. Oh, and then Colts Titans. Colts won. So literally, when whoever it was, forgive me, was it Taylor Christensen earlier said the Broncos got no help? Yeah, it was. No is an absolute, Zach. No means no, right? It doesn't mean very little help or not as much help as they could have. They got zero help. None of the games that had any stake or impact on the AFC playoff picture this week went Denver's way. So doesn't matter, though, because they're the ones that still control the destiny. You win, and all of that ceases to matter. This whole AFC playoff picture and what everyone's fighting for right now is literally hinging. The fulcrum is the Broncos, and do they win one more?
Exactly. Yeah, you needed like 3 teams to lose in 1 week, and that was never really a possibility. But the other teams handled their business. They did what they're supposed to do. The Broncos should have done that on Thursday. Fortunately, they get 2 more chances to, and that's why I don't want another team's help. And maybe I'm in the minority here. I know get in however you get in, but I want the Broncos coming off that bad loss to kind of exercise some of their frustration out on Cincinnati with a playoff spot on the line, national television, and punch their own damn ticket.
That's right. So another thing here I want to touch on is for funsies is Bo Nix versus Jaden Daniels. And I'm going to pull up Bo just so I can make sure to get my numbers right. But he passed for 2 touchdowns in LA. So that gives him 22 passing scores for the season, plus his 4 on the ground. That's 26, plus his receiving score. That's 27 from scrimmage. Today, Jaden Daniels threw 5. Now he has 22 passing scores plus 4 rushing scores. Let me double check that on rushing. No. He has 6 rushing scores. So 22 plus 6. He's now 1 total touchdown from scrimmage ahead of Bo Nix, Zach. His team won in an important game for Washington, so that matters too in terms of perception. And Bo Nix has now 11 interceptions with the 2 that Jaden threw today. He now has 8. So where do you think things stand relative to the Bo leaving movement, O'Roy, all that?
I got to call it like it is, and you nailed it when you said perception, Chad. It's like the Pro Bowl. Whoever has the name recognition and the cachet, they usually get in. This is Jaden Daniels' award. I'm a big Bo believer, but I got to call it like I see it. He cemented that today with a big statement win over a really good Eagles team, divisional rival, a game that a lot of people were watching. Maybe if Bo would have pulled out that victory, it'd be closer, but no, it's Jaden Daniels for the taking now.
It's a bummer, man, and it's still possible. I would pick slight nits with he locked it in because there are still 2 games left to go, but I agree that that's the direction, guys, this thing is pointing. But the Commanders, they're also the 7th seed at 10-5. So this far into the season, he also has 1 win more than Bo does. So they're given, by the way, the Commanders a 92% chance of making the playoffs. The Broncos odds dropped about 20 points by losing to the Chargers. Their probability is now 76% because it's not only, Zach, win 1 and you're in, but you do still have that's the way to control it. But you still have the reason the probabilities are so high is these other teams are so far behind you that 1 loss from two of them, let's say, lose next week, and then the other two lose the next week. And even if you lose out, you could still end up in the playoffs, that kind of thing. That's why it's 76%. But let's just forget about other teams, handle our business, go into Cincy, and lay it to Joe Burrow.
I got to be honest, even if their stats were comparable, I think it would still go to Jaden Daniels because there was all that hype coming out. He was a top 3 selection, Chad. I mean, he had that big Monday night showing, and it seems like, and I said this before, whenever he makes a big play, it's celebrated more than when Bo does. When Bo makes a bad play, it's celebrated less than when Jaden makes a bad play. It was never tilted in Bo's favor. He was always the 6th quarterback off the board, a second-round talent, this and that. Jaden didn't have those obstacles to overcome.
Speaking of, the number of quarterbacks going off the board in the first round, the guy who went right before Bo, Michael Penix Jr., he was in today. It looks like the Falcons are going to take the Bronco model of cutting a albatross of a contract from, well, they don't exactly get to get out of the contract, but moving on from Kirk Cousins is what it's looking like. That's what the reports say. And they're going to eat, what was it, Scott, $90 million guaranteed fully for him. So, boy, it's the Penix. Now you're going, hey, how stupid was that using your first-round pick on a quarterback instead of taking a guy that could help Kirk Cousins after you gave him all this guaranteed money? 65, Scott says, dead. So that's what they'll be eating. But now it's looking like they were prescient in taking the opportunity on the quarterback. However, you still have to wonder, if you're the Falcons, what if we would have gotten that additional piece to help Kirk Cousins? Maybe we wouldn't be staring down the barrel of this situation with the quarterback.
Well, this is now Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Kirk Cousins. Maybe teams will get the message now that you have to draft and groom your own franchise quarterback. You can't really – that the Peyton Manning free agent or trade acquisition veteran that comes in and wins you a Super Bowl, I think those days are past. So we all clown the Falcons, myself included, for taking Penix there, but hindsight's always 20/20, and they made a hell of a move. He looked pretty good today.
Yeah, and it's like Scott says, what if the Broncos had that $90 million this past offseason to put into the team around Bo Nix, right? Yeah, and Scott says, still really dumb for the Falcons to sign Kirk. Yeah, indeed. But all right, Zach, to shift gears, and guys, we'll take a look into the chat to see if there's any pressing topics that you want us to get to. A few hellos. I see Big Earn. What's up, buddy? Broncos country only. I see Greg Smith. What's up? Some other regulars, William, Rodney Garcia in the house. What's going on, guys? David Youngkin. Some newer names like, hey, Chad Fritz over on Facebook. What's good? Great to have you with us. Jody in the house. String Guy. By the way, shout out to String Guy for leaving a comment on the new Bridge the Gap video. I appreciate that, big dog. Much obliged. All right, Zach, one last thing I want to get to for sure, and then we'll see what maybe people want us to talk about in the chat. But Luke Patterson had this article for us today on Sean Payton complaining. You know, the big meme that came out of Thursday Night Football was Sean Payton's call sheet written on the back in bold Sharpie with 2 exclamation points was "run it." And you know, this is a guy, Zach, who gets on the internet. Okay, he reads the blogs, he gets on X, he sees what people are saying about him and his team. And there's 2 things I want to get to on this. On the writing points on his call sheet. Quote, I think number 1, I don't like the fact that the network TV cameras feel like they can zoom into our call sheets, but it is what it is. It's just a reminder sometimes. There'll be little notes we'll put at the top of them. I'll put at the top of a section. I felt we ran it real well early in the game in the first half. Second half, there were 2 series I kind of kicked myself where even when we did run it, it was a type of run that we ran that wasn't effective. And then he goes on, Zach, to talk about the ample opportunities they squandered in the second half. But then last thing I want to talk about, well, first of all, I want your thoughts on that. Then I'll bring up the second thing.
Yeah, you mentioned fart sniffers before. Sean Payton might be the sommelier of fart sniffing, Chad. Like, just for the reasons that you laid out. I mean, he's always reading his own press clippings, and his ego is so big that he wants all the positive attention, and, you know, he monitors the media. A couple questions, though. Why would you have run it on there if you abandoned the run in the second half? Did you want to get Bo's stats up in the second half? Did you not feel Estime could carry the workload? And how do you run it underlined with exclamation points and not expect the network cameras to pick that up? I don't know.
True, and it's kind of funny. It's like draft day, Vontae Mack, no matter what, that he carries that message around with him all day or whatever. Yes, indeed. Okay, the other thing is, and this was something I said, and I would argue against Coach on this. He took exception to the notion that failed series at the end of the second quarter where they didn't run out the clock and they had the incomplete pass. Jim Harbaugh calls timeout. They punt the ball. Tremont Smith runs into the punter. They get those yards and the free kick. Okay, which is good. I was amongst the whatever. I don't know if it was a majority of people in media and fans that thought that was a momentum swing. He took exception to that. And he says, first of all, you're trying to quote, you're trying to shift the momentum. So much was made, ... I thought one of the dumber storylines was the end of the half in regards to us being aggressive with 41 seconds and 2 timeouts. We punt the ball, the half is over with. I read more stuff that I just looked at and thought, this is garbage. Number one, it didn't shift the momentum. We got the ball back to start the second half, went down the field, kicked a field goal. We're back up 11. This sequence, this area of the game you're talking about is the area that as a coach, you look at, you get frustrated with. How do we put a break on the momentum that had shifted? I feel like we could have done a better job there, close quote. You could have, Coach, hey, I don't fault you necessarily, Zach, for trying to be aggressive at the bottom of the second quarter. I do fault you for not coaching up your gunner to make sure he doesn't run into a punter on a crucial game that you need things. But, Zach, yes, even though you came out of the third quarter, you drove down, you got a field or out of halftime in the third quarter and got that field goal. That whole sequence at the end of the second did shift momentum the Chargers' way. It did give them an energetic boost that they were lacking, and it carried them through the second half. You can't deny that. Even if you think Zach just getting a field goal is by default ends momentum, you're tripping. Sorry, Coach.
I will fault him a little bit because, correct me if I'm wrong, the Broncos were up 21-10. There was about a minute left. They were deep in their own territory. They tried to pass on that drive, and they threw an incompletion. You gave them a free timeout. Why not just go into the half with an 11-point lead? Why try to get aggressive there, run it 3 times, and then punt it, and then go into the half? This just feels like Sean Payton kind of looking for excuses and, wriggling out of the culpability for what happened. It's absolutely on him, Chad. It has to be, partly anyway.
I agree. Pearl, hey, good to see you over on the YouTube channel. She reached out to me, was like, hey, I've been having problems with hackers and stuff on my Meta account, my Facebook account. So I'm following you on X. I'm all, well, go follow on YouTube. It'll be easier for you on the stream. So it's good to see you on YouTube, Pearl. Merry Christmas to you. But yeah, the other takeaway here is, again, Sean Payton reads the blogs. He listens to what they're saying about him and his team on the broadcast. He's monitoring what's being said on X. So, I don't know what to make of that. Is that a good thing? It keeps him aware. Do you see that, Zach, as perhaps a chink in his armor where it makes him overly aware and perhaps a little self-conscious to where outside noise affects what's happening between his headset and what's going on in the meetings? I mean, how do you interpret that?
I think he's heard Super Bowl winning head coach Sean Payton too many times in his life, Chad. You have the analogy too much where, like, a kid growing up, they're always told they're the bestest and the brightest and everything, and they grow up and they get a reality check. Well, in 2024, this is not 2006. This is not Drew Brees under center. Sean Payton's had a reality check when some of his own coaching gaffes and play calls have come back to bite him in the you-know-what. But I appreciate Scott putting in there, validating my point. It was 2nd and 13 at Denver's own 15. There were 17 seconds left in the second quarter. And as Scott says, it's not 2nd and 1, it's 2nd and 13. Why are you throwing the ball there? Run it out and go into the half up 11 points. That is on Sean Payton.
Especially knowing you're getting the ball to start the third quarter.
Exactly.
Look, on one hand, it's another one of those situations, Zach, where if it works, you're glazing him and you're going, my gosh, he had the stones. He knew it would work. He passed his way down, got into the situation where the Broncos had a walk-off field goal at the end of the second quarter, he would have been getting no questions. He would not have, no second guesses. People would have been going, yo. But it's also one of those things where the margin there is so thin. You just gotta, it's not that you're playing not to lose. It's that you're just playing smart. Exactly. You're playing against the probabilities. Can you foresee that you're very good gunner? Like, for what it's worth, Tremont Smith is, I'm not going to call him a Pro Bowler gunner, but he is a Pro Bowl caliber guy. That's the only reason he's still on this team. He doesn't play on defense. He's a corner. Doesn't play on defense. He is one of the higher regarded gunners in the NFL. Let me put it that way. You can't foresee, in other words, though, Zach, that he's going to go down and have a lapse in his typically well composed, highly executing, body of work and run into the punter. So in one of those, in that sense, it's kind of like, I have a hard time castigating Payton too much, but the way Scott lays it out, it's, you're dealing with a 2nd and 13 and you go no huddle and you throw the ball. Bad decision, coach. Just not smart, buried at your own 15.
String guy saying hindsight's always 2020, and sure, you're right. But I was saying that when it happened, I was screaming at my television, why are you throwing the ball there? 99% of the time, you run the clock out and play for the second half. Now, we couldn't foresee the Tremont Smith thing happening, but anything can happen on any given play if you give the other team. Look at Deshaun Jackson against the Giants, Chad. 10, 15 years ago, the punt return touchback, that was with 1 second left, last play of the game. Anything can always happen, and you have to be aware of that. It was bad on Sean Payton's part, and as the head coach, falls at his feet ultimately.
It does, and there's no getting around it. I want to grab this real fast here. Where did it go? Jermaine. He says the smartest man in the room, aka Sean Payton, needs to stop with the extra egotistical BS. He's being selfish, putting himself first, not the team. It's annoying and costing us games. Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't, like I said, I don't want to kill him too much because he's done a really bang up job with the team this year, but I feel like he's out to prove sometimes that, look at Bo Nix, look how good he can pass. Let's get Bo's numbers up because it's a direct reflection on Sean Payton. That would be the only explanation for abandoning the run in the second half when all 3 running backs were finding success on the ground.
And also, this is actually the one I was trying to find from Jermaine. I don't want to hear Marvin Mims can't run routes. He ran a perfect route, was wide open. Bo was late, underthrew it. Mims got great separation when he came out of that route. I don't think it's a matter of Jermaine up to this point. The obstacle has not been his route running prowess, his speed, his twitch, his explosion. That's not been it. It's been something, one of two things, or maybe both, either between the ears stuff, which I think is definitely part of the equation. He's just not maybe picked up the routes, picked up the scheme, and thus solidifying his place in the scheme quick enough, or not necessarily not quick enough, Zach, but that explains why he's kind of been late blooming in terms of his role in the offense. The other aspect is, honestly, the team's vision for who is he? What is he? What does he bring to the table? And it has been kind of a fun revelation to see him getting used in a lot of creative ways, out of the backfield, a running back, the routes he's running. But that was a really crappy play, dude. Not only because Bo Nix underthrew it and threw late and then underthrew it, but the Broncos should have gotten a penalty there. That was like, to quote Brandon Perna, I mean, I'll paraphrase him. He's like, yo, that's the first time in the history of the league that a corner doesn't get his head turned around, runs into a receiver on an underthrown ball, and the flag isn't thrown. I hate pointing at the refs, but that was a critical moment because that was when the Broncos needed an answer. They needed the Chargers had stormed back, and if memory serves, had retaken the lead. That's where they needed a little bit of a boost, and it killed the drive.
He was also pulling his arm down blatantly, as the many screenshots have shown since then. So, yeah, egregious non-call by the refs. They only called 2 fouls on the Chargers all game compared to, I think, 7 or 8 on the Broncos. The thing with Marvin Mims, George Payton and Sean Payton talked about it before the season, that it was a numbers game because they had Jerry Jeudy, they had Cortland Sutton, they had other players they wanted to get involved. I'm just happy that they're using Mims now and creatively out of the backfield as a do-it-all, jack-of-all trades. He's also getting looks down the field. He's the only one, maybe with the exception of Troy Franklin, who has no chemistry with Bo Nix, by the way, that can do something down the field and provide some sort of downfield threat.
Amen. Guys, this is your kind of 2-minute warning. Any burning topics, supers, get it in the chat now. Yeti in the Mist checking in. Thank you, my friend. Great to see you. We need to get some more good receivers. I love Cortland Sutton, but he's more of an Eric Decker type possession receiver. We need an Emmanuel Sanders, another DT, RIP. Marvin Mims reminds me of Bubba Caldwell, I think is who you're talking about. I don't know if I wouldn't say that. He's way more of an explosive athlete than Bubba was, but Yeah, they need different types. Sean Payton is like enamored with the 6'4" frame thing. If you look, Marvin Mims is the only guy they have that's under either 6'1" or 6'2" as a receiver. But Mims could be that answer. He could be that Emmanuel Sanders type guy, but he's just not as reliable in a lot of different ways. And so, hey, you're going to have the resources, Zach, next offseason, both in free agency and the draft, to go find that guy.
And people have asked us and asked me on X, should the Broncos go after T. Higgins? And I'd rather have Jamar Chase than T. Higgins. That's what the Broncos need, because I agree. Cortland Sutton's a great possession guy, but you need that game breaker. Instead of, Tim Patrick in Detroit, you want Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who can catch it, a 5-yard pass, turn it upfield for 80 yards and score. They don't have really anyone that can do that. I don't know that Mims is ever going to blossom into that tier 1 elite type of talent, Chad.
And Bubba, for what it's worth, he was 6'1", 210. If that's who you were talking about, I assume that's who you're talking about. But dude, thank you. In comparison, by the way, to Mims at 5'11", 182. So anyway, great topic there, my friend. Thank you. Good to see you, Yeti. And here we have a legend, D-Dub, Dale, our friend in paradise.
Thank you,
across
Dale.
the Pacific, checking in with a generous super chat. Thank you, brother. He says, I think the SDO line can be given the Chargers O line can be given a lot of credit in that game. Our pass rush was good, but not many hits on Herbert. That hasn't been the norm. VJ's adjustment was to bring extras. Justin
identified.
ID'd it, yes, and threw at it with success. Exactly. Thank you. Excellent points, and that was one of the anomalies of the game. One of the key matchups was Broncos' number 1 pass rush, right, led by a bona fide Defensive Player of the Year candidate in Nick Bonito, who was utterly shut out by Rashawn Slater. I think Bonito did get 2 pressures, but they got to was it once that they got to Herbert? But either way, in the second half, dude, they could not get to him. And so, yeah, that has been, by the way, a beleaguered Chargers offensive line that's just been getting tossed in the press there in LA. So they needed, for their sake, a bounce back game, protect their guys banged up, and they did. So I guess, like you said, Dale, credit them.
Yeah, I counted 2. Drew Sanders and I think Cooper got home as well. That was about it for the Broncos pass rush. And credit to the Chargers. They get paid too. The other team does get a fat paycheck. They have Joe Alt. They have Rashawn Slater. And Herbert, I'm not the biggest fan of his, but he looked surgical, almost Peyton Manning-like, dissecting the Broncos defense. And like you said, Dale, pointing out all the coverages or lack thereof and exploiting it. Credit to where it's due. The Chargers offense played a much better game than the Broncos defense.
By the way, you're right. It was 2 Sanders and Tillman.
That's right.
I just looked it up. Thane says Mims is just another Eddie Royal, as if Eddie Royal was nothing. Eddie Royal, my dog, similar frames, similar size. Mims is faster. You could argue their wiggle is about the same, but Eddie Royal was 1,000-yard dang near anyway receiver as a rookie. Was it Virginia Tech? Let me remind myself of Eddie Royal. 2nd round pick in 2008. Yeah, Virginia Tech. His rookie year with the Broncos, that was the last of the Cutler-Shanahan era. 91 receptions, 980 yards, 5 touchdowns. That would have been just a bona fide trio. Well, I'll say the four guy thing would have been Cutler, Brandon Marshall, Eddie Royal, Tony Scheffler. But the football gods had other ideas. But yeah, I can see the comparison for sure on Eddie Royal for what it's worth. That is interesting. But I do think Mims, he's just not as smart as Royal, or at least the football IQ is not there yet. He's a little slower developing. Eddie Royal came fresh wrapped out of the box. Boom. Stud.
Yeah, I think Mims's career trajectory, and I hope I'm wrong, is going to be an elite perennial Pro Bowl special teamer and a really, really good wide receiver 3 or kind of lower end wide receiver 2. And that's nothing to sneeze at. I hope he can carve out a career doing those things, but the Broncos still need 2 tier 1 guys. And I hope this offseason they address that.
The Ronks giving us a little thing here. Raiders won against the Jags today. Giants are now the worst team in the NFL with their loss to the Falcons. So the Raiders now have 3 wins on the year, and the Giants are they a 2-win team? Hold on. yeah, they're the 2-win team. They got the number 1 pick. Both them and the Raiders, man, they need a quarterback. So, tank it from here. And if you're either of those franchises, but okay, I'm going to take one last pass through here. See if there's any topics specifically I'm interested in grabbing here. See people talking about possibly Deontay as an option. Johnson, I would assume, to bring in.
Cancer.
Yeah. Let me see. Whoa, D-Dub. This'll do. That's for sure. How fortunate we are to have such great members like D-Dub in our community. I mean, this is a guy that's like as good as family. Seriously, you can rely on him. Wisdom. You got some advice. You need some advice, I should say. Ask this guy. Thank you, bro. Love you. Merry Christmas to Chad, Zach, and all the Mile High Huddle community here. Love and peace to you and your families. Broncos for life. On to Cincy, but no matter what, live full. A great message, my friend. Merry Christmas to you. Give our best to Gretchen and your family. Hope it's a great Christmas in Hawaii, Big Dog.
Absolutely. Nothing else I can really add. Merry Christmas to you and your family, Dale. Thank you so much for all your support over the years and this year especially.
Thank you, dude. Seriously, I can't overstate how much your support over these years has meant to us. And it's not just the supers, but like not this last meet and greet, not the one before either. Because Scott, you didn't go to last year, right? It was the one prior. Yeah, 22. When we hung out with you, had those killer seats at the meet and greet. You're like invited Scott and I, hey, come sit with my family and I, right on the 50 club level on the west side of the stadium. But it was a night game. That was Russ's first year. Broncos Niners. They won. It was a close game. Came down to the wire. And dude, that's just, I mean, those seats, I don't know, but I'm guessing those are about $1,000 a pop probably. He's like, yeah, hey, Chad and Scott, you come sit with us. We're like, okay. You had your tickets already or something, Zach. I don't remember how it shook out, but that's just one example of D-Dub. So Merry Christmas right back at you, Dale. Merry Christmas to everybody within the sound of our voice right now. And let's grab Oi Boy Josh real fast, and then we'll get on out of here probably. Oi Boy 90 in the house saying, I'm tired of all the excuses and blame placement. We all know the faults of this team, and so do they. Literally, it's win or bust, period. Hashtag no excuses. That's the mindset they got to have, Josh. Well said, bro. Thank you.
And I agree, but now that the Broncos are aware of their shortcomings, especially on defense, they can't turn back from that now. It's really, like I said, a pivot point, and they have to show that they can overcome and course correct. Otherwise, they don't deserve to make the postseason. And just speaking frankly, but thank you, Josh.
Last one here from the Ronk. Great show tonight, Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. Go Bo Broncos. Thank you. It's good to see the Bo Broncos back in your Go Bo Broncos. Now all seems right with the world. Thank you, pal. We got a few messages for you. Then we're going to dip, but don't leave because I got some special shouts coming here at the end of the show.
Another tremendous episode, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on X at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on X at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, and myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, very important that you please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Hey, did we miss a Phil from earlier by chance? By the way, shouts to Don Jensen for writing his a thesis in his Facebook comment at 628. Thank you, Don. Did we maybe miss one from Phil? Here it is. Good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. Happy holidays to all. Will we see Tyler Bidet sometime, and would he benefit us? Hashtag Buckham, MHH for life, Broncos for life. Sorry we missed that one initially, Phil, and I'm glad you put a comment there at the bottom to remind us. Very helpful, big dog. Every once in a while, something might slip through the cracks. So thank you, buddy. Zach, what's your answer for him?
I'd like to know as well, Phil, what's going on with Bidet, because he got injured in the Jets game. It was a scary injury, a back injury. I think he's still on. Is he still on IR or not? But regardless, there's been nothing. I mean, not word one about Bidet's status. So either he's not ready to play, the injury was worse than they let on. But I would like to know at least what the severity was and what he's dealing with, because he was looking like a good running back when he was healthy.
I think it was a scary enough injury that they're just not reopening that. They put a lid on that jar, put it in the fridge, like we'll live to fight another day. I think another season, more like it, because we've not heard word one. There have been no message from the team, no press releases to us about him being activated, starting the clock, so to speak, see how he's looking. So it doesn't appear that's the path. It looks like they're going to, in terms of doing anything different, Zach, it's getting Blake Watson some reps. And he had a couple of decent runs in LA, even though his average didn't turn out very well. I mean, he ended up with 4 carries for 10 yards, but he did have one that went for 7. That was a nice run. It was a nice play. He ran it well. So I think you're going to see a little bit more of him and a little bit more of Audric Estime. Whether or not that ends up being the difference, time will tell. I think we all have our misgivings. And he's not going away from Javonte. For what it's worth, and especially, Zach, when the chips are down, it's going to be Javonte in there for Sean Payton.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate, but it could be a case where maybe Bidet had like internal damage or some sort of organ. I mean, it was scary. He was carted off, and we've heard nothing. So we would like to see him return, but obviously health is more important. Also, McLaughlin's coming back this week, God willing, Chad. So that'll boost the running game. But is Sean Payton going to stick with McLaughlin? Is going to give Estime carries? This is the $1 million question every single week.
And hey, dude, let's not forget one of the primary driving factors of Andrew Luck's shocking early retirement was the lacerated spleen and other internal injuries he suffered against the Broncos from Danny Trevathan, if you guys remember that. It can be scary when there is internal damage. We don't know for sure exactly that there was, but if it is something like that, better served to just let him heal and let him get back on his feet in full due time. And that's probably next year for Tyler Bidet. But guys, this has been a great show. Zach did our call outs. I want to give some shouts to the great members of the community who have answered my call, gone to the new Bridge the Gap music video on YouTube and left a comment, like the Ronk, like Michaela. Let's see. George Georeich, that's his YouTube handle. Let me see. Taylor Christensen throwing down a comment. Appreciate you, big dog. Let me see. Dylan doing it, answering the bell. Thank you, pal. Even Lance jumping in there. I appreciate Sanderson. Diamond Rattler. The Duchess actually twice. Really cool. String Guy, as I mentioned earlier. So thank you, guys. Go if you haven't checked it out. Hey, we're kind of in between games, 9-day gap between Thursday and when the Broncos play on Saturday. Go check out the BTG video that just came out about a week ago. Just drop the link in the chat. Appreciate you guys, and like it if you would, and leave a comment. Very helpful to us. But here's a shout out, a special shout out, and a mile-high salute to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters tonight, helping us keep the lights on, like the Papa Bear, Merry Christmas. Taylor Christensen, Merry Christmas. Justin Lloyd, Merry Christmas. The Ronk, Casey Nickel, Merry Christmas. All of you, Merry Christmas. James Todd, MBLEX. Let's see. Brandon Williams, Yeti in the Mist, D-Dub, 2 Top Rope Supers. Love you, bro. The Oi Boy, Chaos Rogue, Josh on X. I said the Ronk, Phil McLaughlin. Glad we got you at the 11th hour there, big dog. And we'll be seeing you tomorrow night, guys. But just in case you have plans, maybe you're at a family Christmas party, if we don't see you again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and thanks for everything that you do for us as a channel and as a platform, and just all the support, the likes, the views, everything, the comments. You mean the world to us. Enjoy your families and have a safe Merry Christmas, especially if you're traveling.
Absolutely. And on the Broncos side, we're on to Cincinnati. We're putting that Chargers game behind us. They can still clinch Saturday. So good vibes. Keep your heads up. Be positive. Have a Merry Christmas. We'll see you tomorrow to get ready for that Cincinnati game. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.